Bloom.
Present.
Member Mecklenburg.
Here.
Member Connors. Member Giacoboni.
Present.
Member Maderas. Member Scholes.
Present.
Executive Director Miguel Nunez.
Present.
Legal Counsel Rick McCarthy.
Present.
Thank you, Vice Chair.
The first agenda item is the board will review and rule on any deficient, challenged, or otherwise defective mail ballot received for the presidential preference primary held on April 2, 2024 pursuant to Chapter 20, Title 17 of the General Laws. I'll turn that over to the Executive Director.
Thank you, Vice Chair. The staff, consisting of Rob Quinn and 4 of our seasonal staff, processed 7,125 mail ballots using our high-speed mail ballot sorting and verification equipment. 11 of those ballots were deemed deficient through our mail ballot certification sessions, and these voters were mailed deficiency notice as per is required under board regulations. 7 of these voters returned their deficiency notices by the 4 p.m. deadline on April 5th, and their ballots were approved during certifications. 4 voters failed to return their deficiency notice. 2 of those ballots have no signature at all to compare to, and 2 were deemed during certification to not match the voter's signature on file within the central voter registration system. Hence, the voter being sent the deficiency notice. I have here the two ballots that do not contain a signature. And if the board would like to see these to confirm that fact, that the ballots returned by the voter have no signature present. They were sent the notice, they did not return it by the deadline. And these, upon an order of the board, would be voided. I also have 2 ballots in which the signature was deemed to not match the voter's signature on file, and the voter did not cure it by the deadline. We have put these signatures here on the screen for you today, for you to review for a final determination on it. So the first signature here is by a Liam Kelly from West Greenwich, and her signature on file. Sorry.
It was right. It's the bottom, right?
So the top signature there is the signature that is on this mail ballot envelope. And the bottom signature is the signature from the central voter registration system. For both of these voters that you're going to see today, there is only one signature on file in the central voter registration system. And there are no previous signatures to go by.
Do we know when that the signature from the central voter registration was from?
Change of registration, yes.
Yeah. I just don't know if there's a date, like, that's what I meant.
Oh, yeah. Okay. That was last done in 2021.
Okay, so it's not that long. I ask because we don't know if a person has a disability or something might have happened in the years before, so. But,
Now,
yeah.
this would have gone through 3 teams
Okay.
on our side, as per the regulations, so 3 teams disqualified it. Yes. Just make sure it's. Does anyone else want to see it, or are you fine with them?
Move that we disqualify.
Okay.
For failure to have actual signatures.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. The ballot's disqualified.
And the second and final signature is by Sandra Varecchia in North Providence. This signature here you see at the top was what was executed on the envelope, and which I have here in my hand in case you want to see the physical version. And the bottom is what is on file within the central voter registration system. And again, this was verified by 3 teams.
That was that was an electronic pad, right?
Yes, it appears to be an electronic pad, yeah.
Okay, I move to disqualify that ballot because the signatures.
Is there a
Right,
second?
actually, compare.
Is there a second?
Second.
Just a question, why is there, you have 2 on file for them?
Mhm.
Is that what we're?
That one may have had an addition, that was 2, yes. Excuse me. So we did have 2 for that person, but they're identical.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it, and that, in the ballot of Sandra Varecchia is disqualified. With Ray, just a quick question on the first 2 with no signature. Should we vote those separately, or are they just invalid by operation of law?
You should vote them. They don't have to be done separately. In previous votes you've taken, you've done them as a group where one of the staff comes up and says, these are facially deficient, but those have typically been a much larger number. So you have the option, but your practice has been to rely upon the staff's determination that they were facially invalid as opposed to a signature mismatch.
And so with regard to the 2, Director, if you could just read us the ballots, and we could probably handle it together.
So we have, the first is Olivia Grace Wood from North Kingstown, and the second is Gregory A. White from Pawtucket.
And neither of those contain signatures.
They do not.
Is there a motion in that regard?
So moved.
Second.
So there's a motion to disqualify and a second. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. We got item 2 on the board's agenda. The board will receive the results from the risk limiting audit conducted, which began on Wednesday, April 10th, 2024, until completion. And my understanding is, Director, that this should be combined with item 3 because it's the same report. Is that correct?
Actually, 3 and 4 will be combined.
3 and 4 will be combined. Okay. So we'll do item 2.
Members of the board, yesterday on April 10th, the staff conducted the post-election risk limiting audit of the 2024 presidential preference primary, and specifically the Republican presidential candidate contest, which was the contest selected by the board at your meeting on April 2nd. The audit is required by the Rhode Island General Law 171937.4. It was conducted in conjunction with the organization Verified Voting and utilizing audit software called Arlo, developed by the organization Voting Works. At the official dice roll on April 9th, a 20-digit random seed was generated and entered into the Arlo software. Creating these batches required careful planning and coordination prior to Election Day. For precinct and early voting ballots, each batch is equal to one DS200. If a precinct has more than one DS200, for example, the fire department headquarters in the town of Bristol, we would label one DS200 as A and the other as B. We also distributed labels to the Board of Canvassers, which contained the assigned precinct number and the A or B designation, so they could appropriately label the ballot boxes in which poll workers would secure the ballots after the close of the polls. Poll workers were instructed in training to remove the ballots from each DS200 and place them into appropriately labeled ballot storage boxes and sealed. The same procedure was used by the Board of Canvassers for early voting machines if multiple DS200s were used. For mail ballots, during tabulation, we create batch sizes of 500 to 700 ballots in size typically, but in this case with the small turnout, those were far smaller. However, a batch size can be as small as 1 ballot if necessary. Each mail ballot batch is labeled and recorded with a unique identifier. Upon completion of the tabulation of mail ballots, the staff manually records each batch unique identifier onto a manifest, which is essentially an Excel spreadsheet. This is then merged with the manifest of batches created from each DS200. in the precincts and during early voting. In total, 45 mail ballot batches were created for this audit, with an additional 268 batches from the precincts and early voting, for a total of 313 batches of ballots in our manifest. The random selection of 13 batches for the audit was made from this manifest of 313 batches. 3 of these batches selected were mail ballots and 10 were election day ballots. We had no batches selected from the early voting sites. The audit commenced, The audit commenced at 8:30 a.m. yesterday and took approximately 4 hours to complete. 24 individuals participated in the audit, including 4 of our full-time staff, 10 temporary employees, 5 individuals from verified voting, 2 boards of canvassers, and 3 volunteers from the University of Rhode Island. During the audit, each batch was divided into portions called piles, consisting of about 50 ballots, and we use a precision scale to break those down. Each pile was then issued to each of one of the 6 audit pairs seated at tables. Each time a pair was issued a pile of ballots to tally, it was logged into an audit sheet. The audit pairs then handed the tallied votes for the Republican candidate for president by placing each ballot into labeled stacks on their table, tallying the stacks for each candidate and recording them on a document, which was then returned to the auditor and checked back in. The tally sheet containing the results for each pile were then entered into a document, which was projected on a screen in our warehouse and live streamed via YouTube. The document was also displayed to the public on the live stream to confirm the data was entered correctly. The risk limit for this audit was 9%, which was set by the board, meaning the audit would meet its goal if the results is established with 91% likelihood that the outcome of the election was accurate. The lower the risk limit that is set, the more batches typically that must be reviewed and tallied, which would increase the time necessary to conduct the audit. At the conclusion of the audit, all hand tally results were entered into the Arlo software, and I'm pleased to report that we achieved a risk limit of 6.13%. Effectively, this means that the audit proves with a 93.87 likelihood that if there was an inaccuracy in the tally of the votes for the April 2nd presidential preference primary, our audit would have detected it. This means the results are better than the 9% risk limit that we actually set. The results in all relevant documentation have been posted on our website within our RLA Audit Center for public scrutiny, and a report with additional details will also be published to the Audit Center soon. All mail ballots used to conduct the audit have been returned to their cases and sealed. Precinct and early voting ballots have been sealed and will be returned to their respective boards of canvassers for storage for 22 months per state law. This concludes my report on the RLA, and I'm happy to answer any questions from the board.
I have a question. Miguel, at the audit, were there representatives of the 2 parties?
We requested from the local boards of canvassers, a Republican and a Democrat from the boards, and they did provide us with a Republican board member and a Democrat board member. And they served on the audit board, meaning that is a separate table where if there's any dispute in how a marking is made at one of the review tables, they make that determination.
So I take it there are no objections from members of those parties?
No, there were no objections. We did have to combine one batch in Warwick because the poll workers combined both the ballots from both DS200s from A and B into one box. That is something that states such as Rhode Island who run these audits with precinct-based voting have to deal with when it happens, because you do always have a factor of poll worker error. But didn't affect the audit because we simply made that batch bigger, meaning we audited both machines rather than just one. So we actually ended up auditing more ballots than we would have had to.
Well, I just want to say this is a milestone because it's the first election that you've conducted as our new executive director. And I have to commend you on a flawless election and a flawless risk limiting audit. So congratulations. And I look forward to seeing you work on future elections.
Thank you, and it would not have been possible without my staff, because we've run many audits at this point, and they have been well-versed in how to conduct them, and it comes back to them, even though it's been 2 years since they've run the last audit, but they're so well-versed in it that I'm proud of the work that they did.
And before we move on, I just have one question. Miguel. So in looking at that page, that's our actual page, correct?
That's our website,
Our
yes.
website. So those, the forms associated with this risk limiting audit are all downloadable for the public.
Correct. Everything that we use in the audit is public information, and the audit can go, the public can go in and review it to determine its accuracy.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
With regard to item 3, the board may discuss and vote to certify the results of the logic and accuracy testing for the Charahoe bond referendum to be held on Tuesday, May 7th, 2024. And this matter is being combined with item 4, is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
So I'll also read item 4. The board may discuss and vote to certify the results of the logic and accuracy testing for the South Kingstown bond referendum to be held on Tuesday, May 7th, 2024. And could we have a motion to combine those two items on the agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second. If there's no discussion, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. The ayes have it. Any nay? The ayes have it.
Thank you. Logic and accuracy testing for the early voting and election day voting equipment for the Charahoe and South Kingstown special referendums began on Tuesday, April 10th at 9 a.m. and concluded that afternoon. Charahoe is the regional school district for Charlestown, Richmond, and Hopkinton. The testing was open to the public. 1 ES&S employee and 1 BOE staff were involved in the testing. 14 DS200s and 7 express votes were tested for the polling places. 8 DS200s and 4 express votes were tested for the early voting period. 2 additional DS200s and 2 additional express vote units were tested as backup units. 2 DS850 high-speed tabulators were also part of this testing. A total of 39 machines were tested. The test deck consisted of 6 ballots per DS200. 2 of these ballots were actually express vote cards, for a total of 42 ballots in total used for the testing. These 42 ballots were also processed through each DS850 5 times. 0 express vote units were replaced during the testing. 0 DS200 units were replaced during the testing. The Secretary of State's Election Division conducted a review of the express vote ballot information, and on April 9th, they certified to us that this information is accurate per our existing testing protocol. Before each machine is closed, locked, and sealed, at least 2 members of our staff visually confirms that the totals report printed by each machine matches the expected results on the result key, and that it has been reset to 0. Our election management system is also reset to 0, as reflected on the following reports, which you have before you today. As required, ES&S has provided those 3 reports related to the testing. The title of each report is located at the top right. The first report is the pre-0 report, printed prior to testing. Second report is the LNA testing results report and shows the test results, which have been compared to the key, or also labeled as the voting results report, which shows what the results should be. These results match. The third report, titled LNA Testing Post-0 Report, shows that each machine and the election management system have been reset to 0, and they are now ready for operation in the election. Our staff will deliver the equipment and the supplies to the early voting sites on Monday, April 15th. Early voting begins April 17th for these 2 special referendums. The staff will deliver the polling place equipment beginning on May 3rd. Pickup will begin the day following the election. At this time, if the board has no questions, I ask that you certify the voting equipment for the Charahoe and South Kingstown special referendums to be held on Tuesday, May 7th. Any questions from the board members?
So move.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? The ayes have it. Item number 5, the board may vote to certify the results of the presidential preference primary, which was held on Tuesday, April 2nd, 2024. Turn it over to the executive director again.
Honorable members of the board, this afternoon, I respectfully request that the board certify the results of the 2024 presidential preference primary, which was held on Tuesday, April 2nd, 2024. And the following is my report to the board on the conduct of the primary. 26,647 ballots were cast in the Democrat primary, and 13,058 ballots were cast in the Republican primary, for a total of 39,705 ballots cast in the primary, for an overall turnout percentage of 5.13%. Of the 39,705 ballots cast, 26,813, or 68%, were voted on election day at the polls. 7,195, or 18%, were voted by mail ballot, and 5,697, or 14%, were cast as an early voting ballot during the 20 days preceding election day at their assigned early voting locations. The results are contained in the summary results report before you today. This certification consists of results voted upon either by early voting, mail, or election day polling place ballots, and as shown on the screen above. And you can see a summary breakdown of the turnout, where the vast majority voted at election day, and with the breakout of the mail ballots and the early voting. 1,893 voters deposited a mail ballot at one of the 41 Board of Elections drop boxes located throughout the state, or at the Secretary of State's office in Providence, or here at the Board of Elections. The drop boxes collected 26% of all mail ballots received, and they received 973 ballots, or 51% of the total, in the last 5 days leading up to the primary day. 45 voters deposited their mail ballot at one of the 175 polling place receptacles located within the polling places on election day. The 45 eligible mail ballots collected in the polling place receptacles represented less than 1% of the 7,195 mail ballots returned. 7 ballots placed in receptacles were voided for being improperly placed within the receptacles without any corresponding mail ballot certification envelope, as is required per board regulations. 5,257 voters returned their mail ballots through the U.S. Postal Service, representing 73% of the total. Jen Regan and Charlotte Larondu administered the mail ballot nursing home program, in which 11 bipartisan teams of our supervisors administered 1,563 ballots at 92 facilities statewide over a 14-day period. This represents 14% of all mail ballots requested. In preparation for the general election, Jen Regan, Jacob Ganser, and Rob Quinn conducted poll worker training. Supervisors training consisted of 2 live virtual classes with supervisors viewing in groups from their town halls, and a recording was also distributed to the local boards of canvassers. About 720 supervisors were trained. The staff also conducted 20 in-person poll worker training classes across the state for approximately over 200 moderators and clerks. The final class was held March 29th prior to the primary. This task usually requires an extended 14-hour workday for the staff, usually lasting to about 10 p.m., as staff have to attend to their regular duties during the day in preparation for the presidential preference primary. Also in preparation for the primary, Jacob Ganser and Jan Bazmarowski conducted a virtual training session for the 58 Board of Elections technicians to support specific precincts for the Board of Elections throughout the state on election day. Our staff packed 442,500 ballots in preparation for the primary as follows: 60,400 Republican ballots, Republican early voting ballots, 111,100 Democrat early voting ballots to be used at the 39 local boards of canvassers for a total of 171,500 early voting ballots. For the polling places on Election Day, 109,500 Republican ballots and 161,500 Democrat ballots were packaged for a total of 271,000 ballots that were delivered to the polls. Jacob Ganser and Jan Bazmarowski worked to coordinate the preparation of all election equipment and material to assist our moving vendor, Hogan Movers, who had 2 trucks usually on the road daily. The mover delivered 252 DS200 tabulating machines, 219 express vote voter assistance devices, 219 express vote tables as well, 2,241 privacy booths, and 201 blue supply box containing all the forms, supplies, and ballots which are used at the polls. And finally, 642 electronic poll books. We had 58 technicians, as I mentioned, located throughout Rhode Island on primary day. The Board of Elections received only about 30 calls at our Board of Elections call center. During that day, 0 DS200s and 2 express votes were replaced. This concludes the report of the certification of the April 2nd, 2024 presidential preference primary. At this time, as always, first and foremost, I would like to express my gratitude to the staff for their dedication and their commitment in conducting this presidential primary, as well as to the board for your continued support of the staff as we continue through this very, very busy election year. This concludes my report, and with your approval, I ask that the board certify these results, which will be sent to the Honorable Secretary of State, Greg M. Amori, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from the board members?
Go ahead.
A quick question, Miguel. Can you just elaborate on the manual count? I noticed there was 1 Democrat and 3 Republican.
Correct. So that would be situations where at the polls, the voter may have walked out while the ballot was rejected by the machine, and it had an error on it or an overvote, and the voters put it into the manual count to be tallied. Or it could be that it was just simply not being read for whatever reason, and that would be put into the manual count as well. And we only had a handful of those.
Yeah, small number. Thank you.
I noticed on the nursing home, that's a lot of work to go out to organize that program. So when does the staff or the bipartisan peers go out to nursing homes? How many days before the election?
14 days.
14 days. So they have to do all that in 14 days.
They do.
Yeah, that's quite a bit of work.
And that is a low turnout, too.
Yeah. The second question is dealing with ballots. I know at one time the Secretary of State had the contract to have those ballots printed. And under the laws that statute was passed last year, who has the responsibility of printing those ballots now?
Printing still falls under the Secretary of State. They do confer with us in selecting a printer, but that falls under their responsibility still currently.
All right, great, thanks.
Any other questions for the executive director? If not, is there a motion?
Move we certify the results as presented.
Second?
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it, unanimous.
Thank you.
Do we have to sign these now?
Oh, and yes, we do have a document for you to sign here before you leave today.
Okay.
Thank you. Oh, I have it, sorry.
Yeah.
I actually have it. If they're reaching.
Do you want one specific color? Does color matter?
I don't think so, but you can
I've
do
got it.
black and.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. And as that's been signed, if there's no other business, we can accept the motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. The ayes have it. We are adjourned.